And as I said, I wanted to be mindful of everyone's time, so let's get started, and those folks that are trickling in can join us. So if you missed my initial opening, good afternoon. My name is Will Cote. I'm the Parks Program Director for Parks and Trails New York. And on behalf of the PTNY team, I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. The PTNY team is really excited to continue this Friends to Friends initiative with tonight's workshop on fundraising and membership. We know that there is so much value in highlighting the exemplary work that's being done across the state and creating opportunities for grassroots groups such as yourselves to engage with each other and help you gain some insight, inspiration from the work that you all are doing. Tonight's workshop will be a little bit different from the last session if you were here with us. It's going to be broken into 3 distinct parts. First, I'm just going to give you a very brief 5-minute presentation. We're going to give 5 minutes to each of our featured panelists, in which they will highlight a few successful strategies that they have found transitioning their fundraising and membership efforts to accommodate the challenges resulting from the COVID pandemic. So we'll be looking forward to hearing from Marcia McNally from the Friends of Knox Farm, which is a scenic state park in the Niagara region, Diane Topkis, the Friends of Mills Mansion at Statsburg, which is a state historic site in the Taconic region, and Simon Solomon as well from the Rogers Environmental Education Center, which is a DEC site located in central New York. The next part will transition into a 20-minute curated discussion with the panelists, and that will be led by PTNY's own Lyndon Horvath. The goal is to really drill down some of those very specific methods, techniques, and best practices that our panelists have employed to maintain their fundraising and membership initiatives so that you can sort of take away some of those more minute details that sometimes can get lost. And then finally, most importantly, we're going to open that up the remaining amount of time, about 20 minutes or so, to provide all of you, the attendees, an opportunity to ask Diane, Simon, Lyndon, and Marcia some questions that you might have. So before we begin, just want to cover a few simple housekeeping points. First, as always with virtual meetings, we ask that you remain muted as best as possible to reduce background noise and foster an enjoyable experience for everyone. I also want to really encourage everyone to post any questions you have this afternoon by adding them into the chat, or of course you can send them to me directly via the chat so that we can address those during the question and answer portion of the agenda. After all, that's why we're here tonight. So if you are unfamiliar with Zoom, you can find the chat function in the center of the bottom panel on your screen. Additionally, for whatever reason, things happen. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, put that into the chat as well if you're able. Our team here is going to be monitoring that chat and we'll be able to assist you. If you can't access the chat, please contact Shana Hogan. Her email's on your screen. It's also on the website for PTNY. It was also the contact information that you had today for some of our follow-up information. And just to get the conversation going, we would like to encourage you to welcome yourselves and introduce yourselves in the chat. So, let us know your name, your group affiliation, and if you'd like to, I encourage you to share a highlight from your Thanksgiving celebration. Certainly, it was a unique one compared to other years, but if you want to share a highlight or two and just kind of foster a little bit of that collaboration here we have going. So, the only thing I'll mention as well tonight is encourage you to keep this workshop in speaker view. That is how we have it set right now. Hopefully it'll encourage you to be able to see other folks a little bit more easily. You can check that you are in speaker view by hovering your cursor over the top right corner of your screen. It'll tell you exactly whether you're in gallery or speaker view. So again, speaker view is the way to go. Just a couple of other topics I just want to touch on very quickly. I just want to thank, of course, our creative and dedicated team here at PTNY who's developed this afternoon's program, specifically Shana Hogan, Lyndon Horvath, and of course, our executive director, Robin Dropkin. I also want to give a special shout out to our Arthur V. Savage intern, Erica Schneider, who has had a really integral role in organizing tonight's program. And on behalf of the PTNY team, always want to encourage you to stay involved with us. There is one more session of this webinar this webinar series this year, we will be joined by 3 more exceptional representatives of Friends groups next Thursday, December 17th at 4 p.m. When we'll be hosting a workshop on engaging with your park community. And I think that will be a really nice addition to tonight's conversation. I also have the honor of sharing some very exciting news, which is quite literally hot off the presses. PTNY has been approved to release the applications for the 6th round of the Park and Trail Partnership Grants in mid-January. So it's coming up very soon. It's a very short timeline. You know, while it is important to remember that the program is always subject to the availability of state funding and approval of the EPF by the State Budget Office, we do feel very confident that we will be able to share more concrete details about this opportunity with you in the coming weeks. So keep your eyes peeled and start thinking about projects, activities, and events that you may want to submit for funding. And we will be sure to share that out with you. And also, as a reminder for all of our friends groups, state parks and DEC and otherwise, this is always a good time of year to check and make sure that your agreement, your MOA or MOU with the state is in good standing, because that is a key aspect of eligibility. So we will be looking forward to doing that primarily as a segue here, because it's a great way for PTNY to look ahead into 2021, and hopefully it's a sign of positive things to come, because as we all know, 2021 was a challenging year, particularly for fundraising and membership initiatives. They seem to be particularly affected by COVID, and it's been a challenge for all of us, which includes PTNY, which, as many of you hopefully know, PTNY is a very small nonprofit organization. We've struggled with some of the same issues that we've heard grassroots organizations have struggled with as well. The PTNY's team is looking forward to learning from tonight's panelists in the curated discussion, getting some takeaways. Unlike previous virtual conversations we've hosted, tonight's format will be a bit different because we want it to be a workshop. And I keep saying that. Really what we hope to do is hear from you, learn together, share best practices, collaborate. And we learned in the last session that the current circumstances require that all of our groups be willing to be creative, experiment, and try new things, even if they might not achieve the same success as they have in the past. So to that end, we strongly encourage you to ask clarifying questions, drill down to those insights that you're hoping to gain from tonight's conversation, especially for those friends groups that are driven entirely by volunteers and may not have the backing of a larger or more robust conversation. These are all always opportunities to learn new things and to be inspired by. So with that, let's get into it. We are really lucky to have with us Lyndon Horvath tonight. Lyndon is PTNY's Director of Development and will be curating today's conversation on fundraising and membership. Lyndon has a wealth of personal and professional experience in fundraising, development, and even more broadly, community development engagement. I know that PTNY has already begun to see the positive impact of her efforts on our work, and I'm confident she'll be able to add an additional layer of expertise and insight in tonight's conversation with our seasoned and successful panelists. So with that, Lyndon, I turn it over to you to take it away.
So much, Will. Ugh, blushing on this Zoom. I want to say thanks so much for everyone for being here. As Will mentioned, am a huge believer in nothing happening without a team and many hands making light work. So to that end, I am incredibly excited to be introducing our panelists. We're going to start off with Marcia from Friends of Knox Farm and hear a bit about many of the different areas they have for use of an overused term, pivoted during this interesting year, and some sticking points and some wins that they've had with that. So without further ado, Marcia, if you would illuminate us, please. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Little background, I was hired by the Friends of Knox Farm State Park almost 8 years ago as their first employee. And our Friends Group main source of income is the rental of the over 100-year-old 14,000 square foot historic mansion on the property, where we have an agreement with New York State Parks that all proceeds go into the betterment of the park. The mansion has become very popular through the years, especially for weddings. So it's usually booked every weekend from May until the end of October. And we also usually organize 3 big fundraisers a year. Our biggest fundraiser is our Holiday Arts and Crafts Show, where every room, bathroom, and closet in the festively decorated mansion is rented out to various different vendors to display and sell their handmade craft or artwork. So as you can see, as I'm sharing all this, that a lot of this wasn't possible this year. In addition, we charged a nominal entrance fee at the door. because the inside of the mansion is so gorgeous and such a draw, of course. Another one of our fundraisers is an outdoor festival called Barkbash. Basically, attendees peruse over 100 booths of nonprofits and vendors with their leash dogs in hand. They can also participate in dog-themed competition. It's very popular and a ton of fun. Couldn't make that happen this year, unfortunately. Our third fundraiser of the year is usually a spring and arts and crafts show that is very similar to the holiday art show, but traditionally doesn't do as well, although, you know, it always makes a decent profit. But this year, before COVID was actually part of our vocabulary, I decided to change it up and turn it into a wedding show. And so I was organizing all that before COVID hit. And it really seemed to take off. You know, people were definitely interested. I thought it could serve as a dual purpose in that it could be used as a marketing tool, you know, as well as raising funds for the park. So basically, you know, we had to cancel these fundraisers. And so when I realized, you know, it wouldn't be possible to have the traditional holiday art show, I thought, well, the holidays are canceled. You know, people are still going to want to find that perfect gift for the loved ones in their lives, you know, probably now more than ever. So thankfully, you know, I guess was thinking out of the box, and we were able to turn this fundraiser into a virtual event. And what I actually envisioned is a virtual Facebook event where relatives or close friends would either socially distance meet in their homes, you know, shopping safely online or via Zoom or some other platform, as well as possibly enjoying refreshments and, you know, ideally provided by a local vendor or sponsor of the event, and having some sort of virtual entertainment as well on the event. And it just started to organically come together. People were receptive. I mean, some people are hesitant, but for example, like a band offered to provide holiday music videos to post in our virtual Facebook event. And the singer actually had this great idea to film the music videos in the perfect visual backdrop of the beautiful Knox mansion. And it just turned out great. Another innovative initiative that our executive director, actually Kathleen York, came up with was this great idea to run a campaign in lieu of I Love My Park Day. Every year we have approximately 100 volunteers assist in cleaning up the park for I Love My Park Day. Obviously that couldn't happen this year. Her idea was, you know, simple but brilliant, really, since our dog park is rated the best in Western New York. It is very well attended, and COVID, you know, made it even more well attended. And we had more visitors throughout the whole park, you know, because of it, because there wasn't much else to do, right? So there was a lot of visibility. And so basically, simply, you know, advertising on social media and putting the sign up in the dog park, we were easily able to raise some definitely much needed funds. So, you know, and I mean, obviously these changes are not bringing the same amount of funds that our well-established fundraising events usually do, but I do personally believe and have the attitude that if you have to measure small successes when you change things up, you know, you can just continue to build on those. I believe that going forward, you know, once the word gets out there and people get comfortable and experienced with these new virtual events, you know, they'll continue to grow. And I'm hoping to continue to build on that groundwork and know that the effort and work put in will be less in the future. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcia. I am very excited to dig into some of the very interesting bits of what y'all have been doing around kind of switching to virtual and switching to different engagement models. Next, though, we are going to hear from Diane from the Friends of Mills Mansion at Stottsburg, and they've also done some really interesting things around creative workarounds for engagement and fundraising. So take it away, please, Diane.
Okay, thank you. And I'm really pleased to have been invited here today to share with you some of the ideas that we've had First, we're an all-volunteer group of 12 very talented people, about to be 13. We have no staff, so it provides always challenges of, it's us doing the work, but also in this time, it helped us not have to have very high expenses to pay salaries and hourly wages. So it was kind of a balance with that. But our focus is supporting the Staatsburg State Historic Site, which was this incredible Gilded Age mansion. If you could put the next slide up, you can see the picture of that. So this mansion sits overlooking the Hudson River. It also sits on a park named Mills Norrie State Park, and we get lots of walkers going there, but they don't always come inside. Sometimes they don't even realize that we're a mansion or a museum, that you can come inside. So we're trying, obviously all our fundraising events stopped. We typically do 2 very fancy parties in the mansion, in the dining room. We have a fabulous gift shop that's really always been noted as one of the best museum shops in Hudson Valley. All that obviously closed down. So our first worry was how to become more visible to the people that were walking. I mean, at one point there were so many walkers, we had to close the parking lot because we just couldn't accommodate any more cars. So we jointly with this state staff, we came up with this idea of creating a virtual Staatsburg. So if you could change the next slide. We added to the Friends website a page called Virtually Staatsburg, and it allows us to show what's inside to the people in the park. So these signs were scattered throughout the park. There's a QR code on it that you could just click with your phone and go directly while you were walking and take a look at what's inside the mansion. So if you could change to the next slide, to show you a quick view of what our page looks like. You can see we have a closer look, which is the curator's discussion about a particular object or a couple of the collections. Let's Go Inside has some videos that we have of virtual tours. And the curators and interpreters of the site would produce this information, this content, and we'd put it up. One of the great ones was the family fun, because we realized there were so many kids in the park. So we had a lot of scavenger hunts and contests. Right now we have a gingerbread contest that's about to kick off. And it keeps the families engaged, and it's been very, very successful. We have drawn more people to our website than we had before we even start this. We thought this was going to be a temporary page, but we realized, no, we're going to leave this up. So visibility was our first focus. We had no real master plan, but sort of themes emerged once we started going and thinking of what we could do, rather than just sitting and being anxious about everything. So if you go to the next slide, we have a local winery in Staatsburg, and I saw this couple playing there one afternoon, and as soon as I heard them, they played jazz standards, I realized they would be perfect. And somehow we had to have an event for our members, because we started worrying about retention. So if they can't come in, they can't go to the programs, they can't come to our party, would they stay with us? And membership, of course, as everybody, is one of our bases. So we started putting together, we knew who we wanted to have. Nobody in our region had been able to do an outside event, but we had been in a dance event totally independent of any of the state parks, and used sort of all their rules that they did. So how do you create a socially distanced, outside, safe event? We had a limited number of seats that we were allowed, because I think at that point you could have 50 people in one gathering. So we had a limit. We just invited our members. It was a no cost. We had a sponsor for the event, so it didn't cost us anything. You can see how distanced we are. The singers were on the mansion steps, and everybody in the audience was a good 12 feet away from them. And then we spaced everybody out. We had unique sitting areas based on their RSVP, if they had 1 or 2 or 4 people in their group. Pre-poured wine, packaged cookies. It worked out very, very successfully. The only problem was that it was the coldest night in September, but other than that, it was great. So retention, and we've continued to work on that. We also split up amongst our board members, all of our member list. And in the beginning of COVID, we called them to see how they were doing and letting them know we were concerned about them and keeping in touch. And then the last, if you choose the last slide, so our connection was what we realized our next theme turned out to be. So if you can move to the next slide for me. Our visitors have been asking us to write a book about Statsburg so they could have as a souvenir to take away with them to learn more about the family and the house itself. So being that we had all this time on our hands and not a lot of programming, that we decided we would start writing this book. It's been a labor of love. We've fallen more in love with the Mills family again, with the house itself. It's a coffee table book with about 96 pages, over 120, both historic and contemporary photographs. We did not, you can see on here, we were waiting for the Furthermore grant. We did not receive that. But luckily for us, we had put out a letter of appeal, which we did every year, but we wound up with 4 times the response and the funds coming in for this, mainly because people have wanted this book for so long, they really jumped onto it. And we did I guess it's called a give to get, but we offered, if you give us $250, we will provide with you in the spring a personalized autograph book. That turned out to be 33% of our responders. Before, $250 would be a big donation when we did a regular letter of appeal. We also then said, well, let's try it at $500. You would get your name listed in the acknowledgement section in the actual book, as well as your personalized copy. 37% of our response was on that. So you can see well over 2/3 of our response to our letter of appeal. It was very targeted, very tangible. Turned out to be, actually, we're so happy because we didn't get the grant. This will cover most of our costs. So we're very lucky with that. But we learned a lesson about how to make appeals very specific and very targeted and quite personalized. But the most important learning from this or result of this is that we had minor connection with the Mills family. So Gladys Mills gave the house to the state in 1938. Her grandchildren are the generation that are in their 60s, 70s now. We've had connection with a few of them, but not very many. Well, almost instantly, 4 of Gladys's and grandchildren, and then a 5th one joined in, that we have now ongoing conversations with them through email. They're very excited about the book. They're so happy we're doing it. They have not been to the house since the 70s when we first started the renovation. And every one of them are saying, they all live in either California or Florida. They would love to be able to get up to us in the spring or the summer to be able to visit the house and see the renovation that's been done over the last 30 years that they have not seen. So, like I said, we didn't have a lot of a big master plan, but I think we will continue this retention, connection, visibility theme as we go forward. So for that, it's been quite an interesting but sort of successful, strange time. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Diane. Yeah, I love interesting and successful together.
Yes.
So now we're going to go to Simon and the Friends of Rogers, and they're an environmental center. So we've got a very diverse swath of places for y'all today, and they've also done some really interesting and big ticket things this year. So I'm excited to hear your presentation, Simon. Thank you.
Good way to lead it off. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody, and thanks for having me. Simon Solomon, I'm the director of the Friends Group, the Friends of Rogers, and we've had the opportunity to manage the Rogers Center in Central New York. So the Rogers Center is located in Sherburne. We're basically between Utica and Norwich, kind of in between there. The Rogers Center dates back to 1909. It was initially a game farm where they raised ringneck pheasants, and they literally released millions of ringneck pheasants off into the wild between 1909 till about the 1960s. It opened as an environmental center in 1969 and continued as an environmental education center up until 2010. That was run by New York State DEC. Due to budget cuts, New York State DEC had to close this center. but they still own the property. And fortunately, the Friends Group was able to sign the mutual facility use agreement with the state. So we have a mutual facility use to operate on property and work inside the visitor center up and through 2037. But that does not mean we receive any operational support. We do get an annual intern contract from the state for environmental interns. But besides that, to keep the lights on, to pay the staff, that all comes down to grassroots fundraising. Just real quick, the Rogers Center, we are a 600-acre environmental center. We have 6 miles of hiking trails, various bodies of water on property. And traditionally, we host between 15 to 20,000 people. We're a free access facility, open 365 days a year from dawn to dusk. And this year we saw an uptick in usage due to the fact that, unfortunately, the center was closed where we work out of, but our property was able to remain open the entire time. Impacts from COVID. Oh, well, we had a board meeting on March 10th and ended up canceling our annual fundraising event 3 days later. Hadn't actually expected that we would cancel it, but we had to cancel Spring Frolic. We were also impacted by having to cancel our summer camp program and all of our school group programs. So we lost at least 3,000 children that we typically impact for school programming. Those 3 events right there equal about a $75,000 loss, which it was unfortunate. Federal government did offer some PPP, payroll protection plan program funding. We were fortunate as a nonprofit to be able to grab some of that for salaries. So we have not had to let anyone go. And the way that we were able to diversify ourselves this year, as I said, our annual event fundraiser was canceled, but we hosted it on property. So we did a silent auction on August 1st. We had all those items that were donated from local organizations and businesses. So we had to unload those, and we saw that as a revenue opportunity. So we set our silent auction out on property on August 1st. And believe it or not, in conjunction with the Youth Fishing Day program, where we hosted more than 100 kids and families that day. Everyone was masked, socially distanced. It was a beautiful sunny day, so it really played benefit to us. So in some way, we were able to bring in 50% of the revenue we expected from Spring Frolic. That's okay considering the circumstances. Besides that, we just really want to stay relevant in this time, and we see the Rogers Center as being an opportunity to get out on a property. We have programs scheduled, believe it or not. We have a bird walk scheduled for this coming Saturday. It's pods of 15. Everyone has to be pre-registered. No one enters the building. Everyone's expected to be socially distanced and masked. We are doing first day hike in coordination with New York State Parks and DEC on January 1st. And then we just firmed up 2 programs a month during January up and through May. So we'll host at least 10 programs this spring, anywhere from guided snowshoe hikes to walk our sugar bush to learn about tree identification to shelter building. So everything is outside, everything is pre-signups, and everyone does have to be masked. 2 things we've realized is our annual appeal seems to be paying well in returns from donors. Certainly seen an uptick. A lot of people just received the annual appeal about a week ago. We've had very good response to that, which is fortunate for us. And then, of course, this year we hosted, you can flip to that slide if you'd like. We did a Tesla fundraiser this year. We picked a great year to do it, but we set the stage for that in 2019. Actually picked up the Tesla down in Mount Kisco on March 8th. We were in New Rochelle in the middle of March. Little did we know COVID was about to strike. So we had to run with it. So we ran a Tesla fundraiser this year. It was a national campaign, and you had the opportunity to buy tickets online or to buy tickets at events. We put about 5,500 miles on this car from July up and through October. So we were on the road, COVID or not. We were going to farmers market, cruisins, wherever we could go. All my staff, we were pretty much double masked the whole time, and we were hitting the sanitizer the entire time as well. So I think we'll talk a little bit more about the Tesla, but it was a great opportunity, and I'm happy to answer any questions as we go about. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so. Pardon, little mute button issues always. Thank you so much, Simon. Beautiful car. So we're going to move now into our curated Q&A. So if you would like to go to the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little box that's made up of different boxes, and switch to gallery view. And I think we'll stop doing the shared screen as well so that everyone can see everyone else. Makes for a much better discussion to my mind. So we'll do a curated question and answer, and then we'll go into group questions. So if things come up, as Will mentioned, please do either message him privately in the chat or put those in the chat for the group. I personally have 1,000 new questions, and we've talked already. I already had 1,000. So thank you so much, everyone. I think that one main thing I want to ask that popped into my head, because, you know, we've all talked about, you know, what canceling events or finding different ways to have events. In what ways have you had to redefine success? Because fundraising is such a numbers game. And in a situation like this, we're not going to have the impacts that we did previously in the manner that we did. So how have you redefined success for yourselves?
Well, that's a really good question, if I can go. I think our success, we stopped thinking about it as how much money were we able to raise this year. That was very clear. So it was the two things that I talked about: keeping our members, staying connected to our members, and then doing something that we hadn't been able to do before, mainly because of the amount of time it was taking up. The response that we've gotten from this book that we're writing has been amazing. And we got handwritten notes to say, I am so glad you're doing this. Thank you for doing this, with the checks that were coming in. And I would read it to the board as we'd have our Zoom calls, and just the enthusiasm. So I'd say the connection with our members and beyond, all of our supporters, that's, to me, has been very successful this year, that we might not have gotten to the same level in previous years.
I went into this virtual fundraiser with the thought that if we can just make some money, and, pay our overhead and lay the groundwork down to, if we have to keep doing this type of fundraiser virtually, it's totally successful. If the vendors are happy and the sponsors are happy, I think that's a pretty good indicator.
Yeah, and personally myself, I'm always a numbers guy, so it's hard for me not to look at the financials as we go about the year. So as soon as COVID struck, I did a pandemic budget, and I just started slashing expenses. And I think I've said this before, you can only slash expenses until you're not doing anything any longer. So tried cutting all the expenses down, expecting income to be impacted. Programs were impacted due to the fact that, we couldn't do the programs, so we lost funding in those regards. A lot of the grants, a lot of annual recurring grants, those have continued. A lot of the contractual grants, some have been up in the air whether or not they're going to be released or not. So those have been all released so far. My concern more or less is now 2021, they have a vaccine. Everyone's trying to be upbeat about things. But I'm always the devil's advocate, and I'm concerned what next year will hold. So, our staff and I, we rocked it, I feel. Financially, we had some staffing that was actually coincidentally let go prior to COVID by about a week, and we did not rehire that position. So fortunately, there was a savings there. But besides that, we've had an okay year. We got a lot of publicity through the Tesla as well. On a national campaign, and we've seen donors now that bought tickets that we hadn't known before that live in Montana that are now donating to our annual appeal. So, I think it's different for everybody.
That's amazing. So apologies to everyone else here. I do have a little background knowledge, but I'm going to tease out questions to get at some of it. So, one of the things that we discussed when we had our pre-chat to get ready for this and make sure we were hitting all of those really interesting points was visibility. And we've all seen an increased amount of usage in outdoor spaces this year. But how do we get that through line to connecting to financial support? Marcia, I know you mentioned that you have this troop of really dedicated volunteers, but when we can't all be in a space together volunteering, how do we change usage and other forms of support, which might be donating time, into financial support? So what are some of the strategies that y'all have used on this?
So we try to turn those volunteer hours into members if they weren't already members, and also to have, them donate as well. I mean, something as simple as putting, that sign up in the dog park where it has lots of visibility, so because some people aren't even aware of, weren't even aware of our friends group. So now they are, there's so many visitors that visit our park, and the attendance has really increased. So something as simple as that. And then, getting out there, because we were doing this different virtual event, I actually had news outlets contacting me to be interviewed because they want to have upbeat news for people during these times, right? And what people are doing differently. So we're able to get, some kind of free advertising or publicity that way also, so.
Yeah, from the Rogers standpoint, we've just, I think I said it before, we were just trying to continue to be relevant the whole time and not to sit idle. And I realized a lot of businesses had to sit idle. They didn't have a choice. But, besides the center being closed, my staff and I, we were coming and going. I'm pretty much here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday with staff coming and going, as I said. But the state, which we sit on New York State DEC property, they'd been mandated to stay put and not to travel. Their travel was reduced by 86%. So their staff was looking for things to do. So I'll tell you, this year we've had so much property maintenance down at the Rogers Center, things I couldn't do before because they're using, big pieces of machinery. I have to say the property looks very beautiful right now. And I think when people have been visiting it, they've realized that, we've continued to try to maintain it and update it. So relevancy is my biggest thing.
And I think you already heard from me about sort of the letter of appeal, but actually, I just wrote myself a note on this to say where our membership has pretty much stayed the same. It dips here and there month to month, just as the natural pattern goes anyway. We haven't gotten a whole lot of new members, so retention is a big thing. But I've just actually written a note listening to all of you to say, we need to change our letter to say, perhaps you can donate at a higher level. And so request them, not just to renew their membership, but actually renew it at a higher level. And because of the success we had, I think with the response from the letter of appeal, that might be an open idea that they'd be willing to, increase their donations.
It never hurts to ask.
Yes, exactly right.
The worst they'll say is no. So Simon, I know that, we were discussing retaining members with Diane, but I know that as you mentioned, your Tesla campaign got you out in front of eyes nationwide. So we talked prior to your fall appeal or your year-end appeal dropping. Have you had any strategy that you've used with that to maybe move folks who bought tickets into a donation role? What is your timeline with that? How many new people did you connect with off of that raffle?
Yeah. So, yeah, and I've never had an advertising budget of $20,000. Typically, my advertising budget is about $2,500 for the year for all of our programs. But to make the Tesla a success, I'll tell you folks, from the Tesla campaign was not inexpensive. We did finish in the black at the end of the day, but we had to shell out, as I mentioned, about $20,000 in advertising for that. And we actually purchased the Tesla. As a nonprofit, we didn't have to pay tax, but we were also not eligible for any of the incentives. It was a used vehicle. So, you can kind of do some guesstimates, but Tesla does have used inventory out there with warranties, FYI, for anyone that's in for a Tesla. So we had a decent amount of a marketing budget there. And we've been diligent over the past 5 years to build our base. We met with some consultants a few years ago. In 2011, we didn't have much of a donor base. We had a few hundred names in there. We've been able to build that up over the years to about 3,500 people in our donor database. And that was a strategic discussion even 2 nights ago at our board meeting, is maybe we need to have more focus on building our base. Well, I'd say we picked up probably an additional 2,500 donors through the Tesla. But you have to remember, a lot of the donors we initially had in our database had been impacted because they had been here at Rogers before, so they thought of Rogers. These new donors or ticket buyers that will be getting the solicitation for the appeal, or that have received it already, hadn't actually been here, but they had probably met our staff or learned a little bit about our organization at one of the events or through our website when they bought tickets. So with that being said, we've certainly built up the base, and we were strategic with our appeal letter this year. And basically we said, we're here for you. We've been here for you, since the 60s. We were here for you during the COVID experience this whole summer. We never closed, and we saw you using property. We saw you using the fish feeders, and we appreciate that. So not only were we reminding them that they had been here over the summer, but we've been here for the long haul, and we've seen that return in the past 8 days. I'd say the amount that we've brought in this year is more than we've brought in other years for the entire appeal, just within the past 7 days. I mean, we haven't hit $10,000 in the past week, but $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for our little organization is a lot in 7, 8 days.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pivot success.
Yeah. Every year though, January 1, it starts all over. So we just, we grow and we try to hit the
never finishes.
The bar high. Yep.
So for those who don't have a Tesla and a $20,000 marketing budget, which I know, Simon, is not a normal for y'all. So I'm not, Marcia, you had mentioned that social media was something that Knox Farm, Friends of Knox Farm, had been utilizing quite a bit to get the message out as well. So what have your experiences been with virtual platforms? I know that you've used a lot of them, but maybe speaking specifically to social media and then peppering some others in there if you'd like.
Yeah, so I mean, the beauty of social media is it's free, right? Unless you can boost different postings or whatever. But I really wanted to live by what I set out to do here, in that you make this local, make this about these local businesses are suffering, not just parks, right? So I was, but I wanted to keep the overhead really low. So I just picked a local advertising company. Well, they're not really advertising company, but they have like a presence on social media and online or whatever, and reached out to them. And then, as far as the Facebook event itself, it is some work, and people aren't all necessarily tech savvy. So I did have to, I did have to coach some people or do some convincing to tell them that this was going to work. They were going to, make some money doing this. But I mean, overall, it worked really well. I mean, I think it said that we reached over 30,500 people, with our fundraiser alone. So it's something down the line that we didn't incorporate this year was the potential of taking a percentage of the sales of the vendors to make even more money. But I didn't want to start off like that because I didn't want to scare people off too much, if they were unsure about participating in this event. So.
Thank you. So Diane, I know that I'm gonna kind of, pivot a little bit. I'm really curious about the planning process for the event that you had, because, for example, for Parks and Trails New York, we do have some events, Cycle the Erie Canal being an 8-day, 600-person event, which, it's tough to lose those, both for the sense of community that it builds, but the fundraising aspect that it has. So I know that, to Simon's point, a lot of organizations are trepidatiously planning for possibly being able to do things in the summer, maybe. Yeah. But considering you had something in September and you had all of the safety protocol in place, what was the planning like for that, for others who might be interested in doing something very small scale and very safe?
Right. Well, that's interesting because we are hoping, we normally do our 2 parties or galas are in the beginning of June and beginning of December. So we are hoping the beginning of June, which we do have partially outside, that we'll be able to do that again. But for this one, no one in the Taconic region had done an outside event. And so because we had we have a dance company here in Hudson Valley that we had gone, a couple of members of the board, we had gone to that event, and we watched what they did and pretty much copied it all. So we sent out an invitation. So one, there was a question of should it be paid? Should they pay for tickets? And we decided this is not a fundraiser, because with about 40 people or 40 members, because we had to account for the board and the site staff in that 50, we weren't going to make that much money around it anyway. So we just wanted to find a sponsor or so that could cover the cost of the musicians, which was like $1,000. So that was an easy one to get covered. And then one of our board members donated the refreshments, and we had plenty of wine already in our pantry because we weren't able to do our party. So that part was easy. But we thought through all of the state rules and all the regulations that were there. The number of people, 6 feet apart in all directions. The musicians had to be, we felt, at least 10 to 12 feet, because they're singing, they can't sing with their masks on. So we wanted to make it extra safe to have it even further apart than the 6 feet. We set up the chair. When they responded, they had to say how many were in their party. They could only be in their party. We sent out rules. You have to wear your mask while you're getting to your seat. If you get out of your seat, in your seat, you can take it off. You get out to go to the bar, you have to put your mask back on. Things were pre-poured. So we put this in a list of, must have had 20 rules that we sent out to them, and that we went forward to get approval of Linda Cooper from the Taconic region, and just trying to convince her that we were doing every single thing we could do by the book. And it went off without a hitch. We were so pleased. By now, this is September. All of us have been living in New York under the mask rule and the social distancing rule. And we had hand sanitizer available for anybody. The bartenders poured wearing gloves. So we knew all the regulations, our audience knew all the regulations. And so everybody was very good. And we knew if we didn't do it well, it would jeopardize anything in the future. So we just had to put it all down and be very specific about it, I think. And that's why we got approval for it. So we'll see what happens in June. We use that same front of the mansion to start, usually with a glass of Prosecco. We go into the dining room with catered food, and then out in the back terrace overlooking the sunset at the Hudson. We'll see how much of that we can actually do in June.
That's one of the wildest things. We really don't know what we don't know, right?
Right.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. I could continue to tie up your time, but I want to give everyone else an opportunity as well. So we are going to switch over to group question and answer. And to reiterate the process, I will turn it over to the inimitable Will Cote.
So I've got a number of questions directly to me via the chat, and Lyndon, a couple of them really come down to this broader sort of theme, seemingly about how to make an ask. So I believe, during this last portion here, folks had events up until right before they had to cancel. Those folks bought tickets. I guess one of the questions here is, did you ask those folks to turn it into a donation? If so, how do you do that? Because it can be really awkward to ask that question. So I don't know if you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Is that for me or for our panelists?
For your panelists, but if you want to frame it, I don't know.
Well, I know that, I know definitely that Simon, I think that y'all experienced that with your March event that you had to cancel, and you had really good success with it. So would you want to take this one?
Sure, yeah, it'll only take a moment. So yeah, we canceled on March 13th. Our event was scheduled for March 18th. So we phoned everyone about 72 hours prior to the event cancellation and just letting them know we had to cancel because of COVID, and we got a lot of sighs and, oh no, don't do that. Well, it was the right decision now looking back on it. So we suggested that we were more than happy to refund them their ticket purchase. And you know what? I'd say about 95% said just keep it. So, we basically brought in 90% of our ticket revenue we were able to keep. The silent auction, we were able to pull that off, but the night of, we typically have a matching grant. The board puts up some money, and then we look for individuals to match that during the night. We did not do that. So we did lose a little bit from the night of, but you know, we still made about 60% because everyone donated their ticket purchase back.
Diane, I mean, given that we're unclear with events in the future, do you have a strategy for if the Friends of Mills at Stottsburg isn't able to have events around fundraising? Have you thought on that? Same thing with Marcia for Friends of Knox Farm.
We have not yet. We usually do a strategy meeting in January. It'll be interesting to see how to do it in Zoom, and that's how we plan out the year. So we do not yet. And we did not have an event planned because ours was June. It was de facto canceled. We just didn't even put invitations out. We will see.
So as far as our, virtual event, I'm foreseeing that we'll possibly have to do that going forward. I was even thinking about doing the wedding show virtually and kind of having, the vendors put videos together about their products and describe, what's going on, and have giveaways, because that was one of the things I was going to have. I don't know if we could do a fashion show. We were going to do a fashion show at the actual event, but I have to pick people's brains and see what, there's a lot of creative people out there, and it, it's great to just get input from everybody and see what they think will work, and another idea I had was because we have the dog park. Well, it's not just I had it, I think other people had it too, but photos, in the mansion or outside the mansion with your dog, so that could possibly be something that's socially distanced. And I actually have a jeweler that was a vendor for the holiday art show that said she could make, charms and jewelry out of the photos, and that she would give a percentage of her sales back to the, the friends. So, yeah, there's there's tons of ideas out there. And, a lot of, I went to the Chamber of Commerce near, the village near where we are located, and they actually did a virtual event before in the summertime. So I was able to get a lot of ideas that way too. So I strongly encourage people to reach out to the resources, and reach out to local businesses. That was something that I really did too, because usually we just had, our list of vendors that were interested and they would contact us. But I emailed as many businesses in the village, and surrounding areas to say, hey, we have a great presence on our social media. We have a huge presence. This is a way for you to have free, not free, but inexpensive advertising, right? So I think it worked. We were able to actually get more sponsors for the virtual event than we were for, that in-house event that we did last year. We had only 3 sponsors last year, and this year we had 5, and I was able to have them double their donation. So, sponsorships are cool. That's about building relationships though, of course, and that can take some time, but that's really a big chunk of how we raise the money for this event too, so.
If I could just add something really quick to that. Like I said, we're an all volunteer event, and we have stepped back from thinking, how do we do virtual events? We're hesitant about it. It can be costly. Our membership tends to be slightly older. We don't really know, we don't even have all of their emails. So, so we're not sure how receptive they would be, and the cost, and I don't know if people are just Zoom tired. So we really, as we go forward into next year, we'll probably put that in our mix of thinking, but we do so much better with in-person events. So we're gonna try to balance that with the cost and what we might make. We're not a technical savvy board, so we know we would have to, bring all that together from the outside. So just want to put that out there, that it's something we've been very hesitant about approaching, but it seems to work other places.
So I know we're getting close to 5. I have 2 other questions I think that folks would really like to hear the answer to, so stick with us. One is another question here about how to make an ask that I think is sort of piggybacking off some of the things that Marcia shared, and also have a question from Richard about prospective members. But one of the questions that came in here is actually about local small businesses in your communities and sponsorships. Knowing what they're going through, how do you ask them about following through on a commitment they might have made, or following through on your desire to ask them for money? You know, Lyndon, I don't know if you want to frame that, you know, towards one of the panelists who spoke about that specifically, but it's just one of those questions that might be relevant.
Yeah, I know that both Simon and Marcia, you have had, you know, more interactions with the local community, especially this year as well. So, I mean, if either one of you wants to field that.
Well, I'll just say something real quick, Marcia. You know, and I think I mentioned this when we all met last week, is that the local organizations, we've seen some of the bigger names like the insurance companies reach back out to us, because you got to think some of these businesses have not been impacted. It's more or less some of the many of the small mom and pop stores, restaurants, etc. So in that regard, we've had organizations reach out to us and say, hey, we'd like to renew our membership, or hey, we'd like to match on Giving Tuesday. But besides that, we typically do a business campership program where we send an invite out, or a letter out to all local businesses saying, send a kid to camp. Of course, we did not do that this year, nor did we send them anything. But when our annual appeal went out, I'm going to say we did have some businesses that were peppered within the annual appeal. And we'll just have to see whether or not they're going to respond positively or not. We're all in the same situation, nonprofit or business. So we'll have to see.
I just would want to speak to about, I don't know if everyone knows about the Canva. It's a graphic design platform that's online, and that's a way to save money as well. And, you know, instead of paying someone to do prints or artwork or whatever for whatever you're promoting, a fundraiser or whatever, that's a great tool that just came my way. But as far as, you know, small businesses, I think, you know, the ones that are really going to make it through this are realizing they need to have an online presence. They have to have an online store. So the people that recognize that were, oh yeah, this is a great idea. People, I mean, why, and you know, promoting it so that it's local instead of buying from Amazon or Walmart or whatever, you know, is huge, especially in the community we live in. You know, people are all about local. So I think you just have to touch on those, you know, people's hearts, and then they're gonna be receptive, you know. And I mean, and I hear what Diana said, you know, about, or Diane, sorry, about, you know, people being reluctant and if they're not tech savvy. I mean, I definitely had that hurdle, you know, but I just kept trying to put as easy instructions as possible. And people were reaching out to me, asking me exactly how to do something. And I mean, they love it, you know, so.
Well, we'll give it a shot.
Yeah, I, you know, and you can build your base of who you reach in so many ways, you know, because I'm sure there's people in other parts of the country that are really, or other parts of the state or whatever, that are really interested in you preserving that history, right? So yeah, that would be my suggestion.
So the last question here is a little bit more broad, probably something else some other folks would like to hear about. And really it's, you know, how do you build a mailing list, and how are you identifying prospective members? What's a couple of good strategies to go about doing that if you don't necessarily have a lot of experience?
I can speak real quick for that. As I said, building our base has been a theme for us over the years. We of course have a guest sign in the visitor center that's been rarely signed in on in the past 9 months, but we've been relying on that a lot with 15,000 visitors or so. Not everyone comes in the center. We probably only get a third of that inside the center. So we've always used that as a base. And then word of mouth. So we've always solicited our board members to bring other donors aboard or to mention names that we can then follow up on. And, you know, at this point, we have to get back to it, but we've had a strategic campaign to build our base, and a way to build our base is to friend raise. And the friend raise in the regard as, you know, we want some high net donors that we could build relationships with and engage in. Sometimes you need to set those stages though 2, 3, 4, 5 years out. I know we did receive an appeal donation just yesterday from someone that I'd met with 2 years ago, and all I'd met with them for was to ask for information, ask them some questions, advice, and that turned into some dollars. So these are just things I've learned over the years, and that, you know, I still have a lot to learn myself, but those are the steps we've taken so far.
There's an old saw that is, if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. So,
True.
true in this instance, but congrats on that.
All right. Well, Richard, you know, thanks for sticking with us. That was your question. I think that puts a pin in the Q&A portion. And again, we want to be mindful of everyone's time. I think this will be something that the PTNY team wants to host more conversations on in 2021. So with that, I just want to thank everybody for participating tonight and enjoying. Hopefully you got a couple of tidbits and some pieces of inspiration that you can take with you as you start thinking about your work in 2021 and beyond. Do keep an eye out for an email from PTNY in the coming days. They'll have a survey about your experience tonight, as well as some information about upcoming events that we have, as well as our save the date tentatively for our Park Advocacy Day work. So keeping you in the loop about that information. And of course, thank you to our panelists. We were going to be providing their contact information at follow-up as well. So if you have a question that you think of down the road, or you want to ask more directly with them, you'll be able to reach out and ask those folks, you know, any questions that you might have and pick their brains a little bit more intimately. And of course, please stay in touch with us. We're happy to connect with you anytime you have any questions. Follow us on social media, shoot Shane and I an email, ask Lyndon specific questions about development. We're here to help you. And so we really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll see some of you next Thursday at 4 o'clock for our Engaging with Park Communities workshop conversation. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Much, everyone.
Thank you. Great to be here.